Hello and welcome. You are listening to The Hello You Show. I'm your host, Jessica Rice, and the founder of Jessica Rice Coaching. This show is for ambitious and visionary-minded women leaders and entrepreneurs ready to uplevel their impact and establish their personal brand and unique voice. It's time, ladies, to make our voices heard. Say hello again to the real you. Hi, my name is Jessica Rice. I am the founder of Jessica Rice Coaching and the host of the Hello You Show, where we help women leaders find their authentic voice and leverage their personal power as they continue to rise in their leadership and their businesses. Today, I want to talk to you about what being silenced can feel like. If you've ever been silenced, I think you're going to know exactly what I'm talking about. But it can be nuanced. It can seem a little bit uncertain at times because you're not entirely sure what's happening to you. When we're silenced, it can appear as a way to shut us down. But it could also be like a backhanded compliment. It could include implicit bias against ourselves as a woman or women leaders. And it can incorporate a multitude of emotions. The biggest thing to be aware of is when you are feeling silenced is to take note of the emotions that you're feeling and how you can best respond in that moment. As women, unfortunately, when we're thinking about leveraging our authentic voice, we also have to think about how we communicate so that we are compelling and that we can be listened to. The biggest complaint that women have is that we're not heard. And using your authentic voice doesn't necessarily mean that you are just how you are when you're out in the world or in your personal life. What it means is being aligned with your purpose, your mission, and your truth, and not compromising. There are days when you have to ask yourself if it's worth having a battle over something, and you have to choose your battles wisely. But when you're starting to feel silenced, it can come as very nuanced, or it can come as very loud, or rage, or gaslighting. It can be in the form of someone continually interrupting you, or discounting you, or discrediting you. It can also be done in shady ways where you're not allowed the opportunity to truly express yourself, because each time that you do, someone then circles back and finds a way to pin the argument, the issue back onto you as you being negligent. And so it can become very tricky when we're thinking about how do we leverage our authentic voice and how do we know when we're being silenced. As leaders, as women leaders especially, men can experience this as well, but as women leaders, I think it's so important that we understand what's coming up for us. Is it fear? Is it anxiety? Is it worry? Is it shame? Is it self-doubt, imposter syndrome? And is it even anger? When we react, unfortunately, it puts us in a disadvantage. And so we have to then be smarter and wiser and all of the things that we shouldn't have to necessarily do. But we have to do it in order to keep moving forward and allow for our voices to be heard. So what are some things that we can do when we're starting to notice that maybe our voice isn't being heard or isn't being appreciated, isn't being valued, isn't given the credence that it should? Well, there are a couple of things that I like to consider when working with clients, and even for myself in my own career, when you're starting to feel like you are being silenced and the things that you are suggested are not being heard and you're being shut down. And this can happen systemically because one idea can then start to motivate another idea and then move to another idea. And that's true for other leaders who then may talk about us. Because again, when women speak out, we are usually bucking the system. We are usually putting ourselves into a position where it's a little bit uncomfortable and we are gaining visibility, and this makes others uncomfortable. Not because necessarily all that we're saying or that we're even very threatening, but it's different. And while many companies and corporations and cultures are adopting greater balance, it's still present. We still feel it. So what you can do is, number one, find a partner, find an ally who you can then come to with your ideas. Talk with them and see if, when you are noticing that you are feeling shut down, whether it's publicly in a meeting, in an email, in writing, find ways that you are not singled out and that you're not alone. When you have an ally, let them be aware of what you're noticing and experiencing so that then they can help to speak up and reinforce the value that you bring. Partnerships and alliances can be so crucial with how we move forward. It's all who we know, right? We know this. But it's even more important when we're starting to notice a trend that might be inadvertently impacting our ability to lead effectively or move into the types of positions that we know that we are qualified for. The next thing to do is then move conversations privately. So if there is one individual in particular who continues to silence you, you have two options. If you trust them, you can try to have a one-on-one conversation with them to then see how they respond to some of your ideas when they're not public facing. It could be that they have ego issues and they have this need to maybe have a sense of control or a say in the things that are happening. It might be that they want to keep you under their thumb. And so when you have those one-on-one conversations ahead of time, that could potentially help to ease a then more public setting. Another option is then to partner again with private conversations with another colleague of that level. So if you can then partner with another leader who can then help to bring your ideas forward to this other person, that can also help with offsetting the balance so that you're not, again, feeling singled out, and that your values or your message has value and is being heard, and that clearly others are valuing it. Again, this requires so much trust. Trust is the foundation and the cornerstone to all success within companies. And yet we still seem to be facing so many issues relating to distrust and dishonesty and culture conflicts, which is why it's so important that we develop programs and ways that we can, encourage equity, inclusion, and then even resource groups to help us when we're coping with these issues. The last thing I would say for you to do is to think about yourself. And then think about your communication style, and then think about others' communication styles. When we are trying to be authentic, we have to then walk a tightrope on how we communicate. And so often as women, we are chameleons and we will fold into what it is that's required of us. It's important to know when to back up, push back, and when to lean in to a type of conversation or conversation style. Essentially, you need to beat them at their own game. If you have a boss who prefers you to get information out quickly, then you might want to take that into consideration. But you also don't want to come across frantic. And so, if you can succinctly say your message while remaining calm, now you are going to be more compelling because you are thoughtful, but you're not frantic. Oftentimes, women get mistaken for being frantic or unprepared or nervous because we have so much going on in our brains. It's just how we're wired. So we have to learn to calm some of that down, create some clarity, and deliver our message in a very succinct and pointed way. This is the least popular approach, I would say, because it means that you have to really think about and how you alter yourself. And in some ways, acquiesce to the situations that you're dealing with. But if you're in a situation where you're noticing that you're starting to become silenced, your voice isn't being heard, and you're not being valued for the wisdom that you bring, the expertise and the skills that you bring, then it might be important that you find some different tactics on how to maneuver the situation while you think of other strategies that you can approach, other alliances, other partnerships, and potentially a transfer to another role, another company, another opportunity, depending on the situation and the level of hostility that you're experiencing. I hope this is helpful and valuable for you today. Unfortunately, as women, when we're trying to use our voice to make ourselves heard so that we can keep rising up and so that they can understand all of the value that women bring and the different ways of thinking and the ideas that they haven't thought of yet, we can unfortunately receive backlash due to a variety of issues. And we have to think about how to maneuver that smart so that we are not losing our footing, that we remain calm, cool, and collected, and we are always one step ahead. I hope you can join me next time and look forward to our next conversation.